Lou Johns had always been a man of rhythm. From the time he could hold drumsticks, his life was set to a beat. Inspired by Pantera, he dreamed of drumming on the big stage. But life had other plans. Now, he kept rhythm at the plant, maintaining massive, steel vats of toxic waste. The plant was a sprawling maze of pipes and vats, where toxic sludge was stored and processed. It stank of chemicals and despair, but Lou didn't mind. He had his music, and he improvised drums on pipes, railings, even the waste containers. It was his way of keeping the dream alive. Dana, his ex-girlfriend, also worked at the plant. Their breakup was messy, leaving bitterness lingering like the smell of sulfur. She always resented his obsession with music, especially after it seemed to eclipse their relationship. When they parted, she stayed at the plant, her resentment festering. One day, Dana saw an opportunity for revenge. Knowing Lou's habit of tapping on the toxic waste containers, she loosened a few screws on one. It was a small, subtle sabotage, just enough to weaken the structure. If Lou tapped on it hard enough, the container might break open. It wouldn't hurt him, at least, that's what she thought, but it would be enough to get him fired. Maybe then, he'd regret all the time he'd spent drumming on his work instead of paying attention to her. That night, Lou was alone in the storage facility. The plant was quiet, the hum of machinery the only sound besides the heavy riffs of Pantera blaring from his portable speaker. Lou was in his element, his hands dancing across the surface of a large metal vat, tapping out an intricate rhythm. He was lost in the music, until he hit that one container. The sound that followed wasn't the crisp, sharp note he expected. Instead, it was a sickening crack, followed by the high-pitched whine of metal giving way. Lou barely had time to react before the container burst open, spraying him with a torrent of thick, glowing green sludge. The force of the toxic waste knocked him to the ground, and he screamed as the caustic liquid seeped into his skin, burning him from the inside out. The pain was unimaginable, but worse was the sensation of his body changing, warping as the toxic chemicals infiltrated his DNA. His skin bubbled and melted, fusing with the fabric of his blue overalls. The last thing Lou remembered before everything went black was the feeling of his face, his very flesh, melting away as the toxic waste ate through him. Months passed, and the plant did everything it could to cover up the incident. Lou's body, or what was left of it, was sealed in a reinforced glass case and hidden deep within the facility. Officially, Lou Johns had simply vanished, another casualty of the unforgiving industrial landscape. Unofficially, he had become a ghost, a secret the plant hoped would never see the light of day. But secrets have a way of coming back to haunt those who keep them. One stormy night, in the dead silence of the plant's lower levels, something stirred. Lou's body, encased in glass, twitched. His eyes, once human, snapped open, glowing with an eerie green light. The mask he had worn to protect himself from the fumes had fused with his melted face, becoming a permanent fixture. His blue overalls were now part of his mutated skin, his body a grotesque fusion of man and toxic waste. The case shattered as Lou, or whatever he had become, rose from his confinement. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if remembering how to walk after an eternity of sleep. He was no longer the man he had been. He was something else entirely, something born of poison and vengeance. Upstairs, Dana sat at her desk, oblivious to the horror that had been unleashed below. She tapped idly on her keyboard, the rhythmic clicking a cruel mockery of the sound Lou used to make. The lights flickered as toxic Lou, dripping with sludge, made his way toward her, his footsteps leaving a trail of corrosive muck in his wake. Dana's head snapped up as she heard the door to her office creak open. Her eyes widened in terror as she saw the figure standing in the doorway, hulking, twisted, with glowing green eyes. That bored into her soul. It took her a moment to recognize him, but when she did, her blood ran cold. "Lou," she whispered, her voice trembling. Toxic Lou didn't respond. He didn't need to. He reached out, his fingers elongated and dripping with toxic sludge. Dana screamed as his hand closed around her arm. The flesh beneath his touch began to bubble and melt, the toxic ooze eating through her skin like acid. She tried to pull away, but his grip was unrelenting, his touch consuming her entirely. Within moments, Dana's screams were silenced as her body dissolved into a puddle of muck on the floor, her existence erased in the blink of an eye. Toxic Lou stood over the remnants of his former lover, his chest heaving with what might have been satisfaction, or something darker. The plant was silent once more, but this time, it was a silence filled with the promise of retribution. Toxic Lou had risen, and nothing would stand in his way. As he walked through the empty halls of the plant, the walls seemed to hum with a new rhythm, a rhythm of vengeance, of metal, and of the unstoppable force that was now Toxic Lou.